Hello and welcome back to my studio. It's Lois here. I hope you're all doing well. I'm really looking forward to this video because it gives me a chance to share with you my current favourite brushes, the ones that I really enjoy using and the ones that I feel perform the best for me for my watercolour landscape painting, which of course is really important. But it's really important right at the start to say I'm not endorsing brands. I don't do that. It's the brush shapes, the brush types that I enjoy using. And you can get them from a load of different brands, cheap, expensive ones, natural hair, synthetic, etc., etc. And the brushes that I really am enjoying using the most at the moment are from top to bottom here as shown in my book. Number one, a large flat wash brush. I use a Mottler brush, but you can use a Harkey brush, or it's pronounced Hake in its westernised form. So any large flat wash brush that's designed to hold plenty of paint and water. And then number two is my size 14 mop brush. So squirrel mop or synthetic mop, any of them will do. But again, as long as it's designed to hold lots of water, a nice soft brush with a good point. And then number three are the round brushes. I like a size 14 and a size 4. And I also like to use a small calligraphy brush. It's exactly the same as a small round. And then number 4 is my old faithful 3/4 inch flat brush, what's known as a one-stroke brush. Number 5 is a rigger brush. And number 6 is a small fan brush. And of course, those of you that are regulars to the channel know that I love to use a palette knife to scrape into the paint, and I use that like a brush, so that has to come in to my top selection of favourite brushes. And with these brushes, or a combination of them, my favourite brushes, I feel that they can be used to paint just about anything that I want to within the genre of landscape painting. But of course, it takes a lot of practice to get used to any style of brush. So those are my current favourite brushes. Now I'm going to try and show you why I like them so much. But first, a quick promo for my book, Landscapes in Watercolour, Techniques and Tutorials for the Complete Beginner. It's now available to purchase from all good bookstores, and there's a couple of links in the description below if you're interested. So now let's get back to the video. So I'm going to start with the large flat wash brush, or the Princeton Aqua Elite. Mottler is the one that I use, but any large flat wash brush that you get used to will do this job for you. It's a big brush. I love big brushes, and I particularly love this one for the sky. I can cover and wet the page really quickly for wet in wet, and I can work very, very quickly using its versatile brush head. I can use the belly of the brush, the tips of the brush, the corner of the brush. It holds plenty of paint, and I can quickly build up a sky to great effect just using this one brush. With practice, you can use any large wash brush to create a sky like this, but it does take practice. But it's really important. The bigger the brush, the less brush marks you end up getting. So with practice, you can avoid overworking and keep your skies beautiful and fresh and full of atmosphere. So the second brush is my size 14 mop brush. That can be used to paint skies in exactly the same way. Some people prefer a round mop for their skies. Again, it's got a big brush head. It's really versatile. But it also works beautifully to soften washes back. Clean and damp, you can see here it's just adding nuance and expression to the sky. And now moving on to the larger round brush. I love the large size 14 round brush with a good point for putting in wet on dry details in particular. So painting in these distant hills, again, a large brush head enables me to get the washes in really quickly, to use the minimum amount of brush strokes to create the effects that I want to. It holds plenty of water, but it's got a good point as well, so you can get really nice shapes and edges and detail with this brush as well. And of course, it's really, really effective for painting in graduated washes, and then with drier mixes of paint to drop paint into the wet underlayer and to paint a beautiful row of trees as here, so that it all marries and mingles and diffuses and looks really effective on the page. So those are my three big brushes. Of course, with this round brush comes the small round brush, for which I often use a calligraphy brush. But as I always say in my videos, when you're using a small round brush or a calligraphy brush, any good small brush with a good point that you're comfortable using will be just as effective. The one thing I'll say is don't go too small with your brushes. My small round is a size 4. It still holds plenty of paint, and that's what you want. If you go much smaller than that, you'll find you're constantly dipping into your paint as it runs out within the small brush head. So here's the finished painting that I was demonstrating with those brushes earlier. The foreground was painted with a combination of the large mottler brush, the flat brush, and the round brushes too. So these remaining brushes I shall demonstrate to you on the back of an old painting why I like them. So the 3/4 inch flat brush, or whatever size flat brush you like, but I would say go no smaller than 1/2 inch. And these are known as one stroke brushes. This is why. One stroke and you can do a geometric shape like a roof or a wall and keep it nice and fresh. Again, like everything, it takes a bit of practice, but this is a great way to practice painting walls for cottages and things like that within your landscape, and of course roofs. You can add a bit of dark colour into the wash while it's wet using the flat brush too, and that gives a little bit of variety to the colour and the texture of your geometric features. And of course you can use the belly of the brush, but you can also use the tips of the flat brush and get some really fine lines for things like fences, fence posts, gate posts, all that sort of thing. So here's a couple of sort of grey shapes, and the tips of the brush are fantastic for putting in water effects, ripples and things like that, for building up washes and just using these lovely spontaneous side to side sort of swirling marks. It's a lovely brush for painting water. So next is the rigger brush. This is a size 2, originally designed for painting ship's rigging, as the name suggests. Also known as a liner brush, of which you can get all sorts of different shapes, but I like the rigger. And we can dip that into a nice sort of dark brownish colour, and it's my go-to brush for painting trees and branches. The long hairs are quite flexible, so you can get an almost unpredictable mark, but within the confines of the shape that you're trying to make, so that you can get really spontaneous and fresh looking branches, trunks and twigs, that sort of thing. The long hairs hold a lot of paint, so you can keep going for quite a while. But if you want really long strokes, then a sword liner is fantastic. It's even longer and thicker. But a rigger is absolutely fine for most lining purposes. You can see we can get some really nice long fine lines. They'd be good for telegraph poles or rigging or anything that you need to have that sort of fresh, spontaneous fine line for. And finally, moving on to the fan brush. This is a small synthetic fan, and I really like it, particularly for spattering. That's my favourite job that I do with the fan brush, but it does make some quite interesting marks too. You get some interesting dry brush marks with it. It works really well for putting in foliage. See it skimming across the texture of the paper, but if I cover the marks here that I've made in this demo with a piece of paper to sort of protect some of it, I'll mix up an inky consistency of paint and then use the fan brush tapping it or flicking it, and it delivers according to how hard I flick it or how runny the paint is. It delivers large or small spatter drops, which can be used in the wet in wet technique or wet on to dry, as I'm doing here. And it can build up wonderful texture and give you some lovely effects, really make things sort of loose and free and, as I say, very beautifully textured. And of course, look at this wonderful effect of sort of grasses or reeds that you can get. using the fan brush like this. And of course there are almost infinite ways of using any of these brushes. So along with the palette knife for scraping through paint and lifting out paint, these are my favourite brushes at the moment. And it's not an exhaustive list, by no means. These are just my favourites. And I'm not recommending these to anyone unless you've got them and you like them. But the important thing to say is it's good to discover your favourite brushes. You'll find they are the ones that produce the best marks for you. And I hope this video has been helpful in showing you what I use these brushes for. Of course, I use them for a lot more things. I can only show you a few things here of what they're useful for. But the best advice that I can give you is use as larger brushes as you can get away with to keep things fresh. Get used to and try out different shapes and sizes and styles of brush. So example, try out a large flat wash brush and then try out a large mop brush, different shaped brushes, and see which ones you prefer. Just because I like a particular brush doesn't mean that you're going to like it. We all have very personal and individual ways of painting as we develop our own styles, and of course that results in the kinds of brushes that we're drawn to and the ones that work the best for us once we get to know them. So I'd be really interested to read in the comments if you have any particular favourite brushes that you really enjoy using. I think that could be really interesting, so please put those in the comments below. Well, thank you so much for watching. Please click on the like button and maybe subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And thank you so much to everybody on Patreon who supports us and the channel. I'll see you again soon. Take care and happy painting. Bye.